What if two of Hollywood's brightest stars liked each other, but never admitted it? What if they spent months together, laughing, talking, and working side by side, while both quietly hiding the same secret in their hearts? This isn't just a made-up story. It really happened, and the two stars at the center of it were none other than Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. In the early 1990s, both were young actors still climbing their way up the ladder of fame. Sandra Bullock was known for her bubbly personality and charm, while Keanu Reeves had already been noticed for his cool, calm style in films like Point Break. Then came the movie that would change everything: Speed. This fast-paced action film threw them together in front of cameras, and something magical happened. The audience could feel it, the critics could feel it, and even other actors noticed it. Their chemistry was electric, natural, and unforgettable. But what no one knew at the time was that behind the lights and cameras, Sandra secretly had a crush on Keanu. She admired his kindness, his quiet humor, and the way he made everyone around him feel comfortable. At the same time, Keanu also had feelings for Sandra. He thought she was funny, intelligent, and full of light. And yet, neither of them spoke up. Both were too shy, too respectful of the other, and maybe too afraid of ruining the beautiful friendship that was forming between them. So while fans across the world whispered, "They must be together, right?" the truth was different. Keanu and Sandra smiled for interviews, praised each other, and moved on with their lives, keeping their feelings hidden deep inside. It was only years later, through interviews and confessions, that the truth finally came out. And by then, it was too late. This story is not about a romance that bloomed, but about the one that stayed hidden. It is about two people who admired and cared for each other deeply, but chose silence. Sometimes the most powerful stories are not the ones about love gained, but about love left unspoken. The year was 1994, and Hollywood was buzzing with excitement over a new action thriller called Speed. On the surface, it sounded like a simple movie, a bus rigged with a bomb that would explode if it dropped below 50 miles per hour. But what no one expected was how this film would become one of the biggest hits of the decade, and how it would introduce audiences to a pairing that felt almost magical: Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. Keanu played Jack Traven, the brave, calm, and determined police officer who takes charge when danger strikes. Sandra played Annie Porter, a regular passenger who suddenly finds herself behind the wheel of the bus, responsible for saving everyone on board. The tension, the danger, and the adrenaline made the film thrilling. But what truly made audiences fall in love with Speed was the undeniable chemistry between its two leads. From the very first moment Jack and Annie looked at each other on screen, fans could feel the connection. Keanu brought quiet strength and steadiness, while Sandra brought charm, humor, and warmth. Together, they created a perfect balance: two characters who seemed destined to meet, destined to rely on each other, and destined to win together. Behind the cameras, Sandra and Keanu quickly developed a real friendship. Sandra was still new to big Hollywood films, and she admitted later that she often felt nervous stepping into such a large role. But Keanu was patient and encouraging, always helping her feel comfortable. He had a calm energy that put people at ease, and Sandra couldn't help but admire that. For Keanu, Sandra's quick wit and down-to-earth personality made long hours on set enjoyable. She had a way of making everyone laugh, and Keanu admired how natural she was, both as a person and as an actress. When Speed was released, it was an instant blockbuster. It made more than $350 million at the box office and turned both actors into household names. Critics praised the film, but even more, they praised the duo at its center. For audiences, it wasn't just about the bus, the bomb, or the explosions. It was about Jack and Annie, and the spark that made them unforgettable. What no one knew then was that the spark wasn't just acting. Beneath the surface, Sandra had already developed a quiet crush on Keanu. And though Keanu was too private to say anything, he also found himself drawn to her. Speed didn't just make stars. It began one of Hollywood's sweetest hidden stories. When Speed wrapped filming and the cameras stopped rolling, Sandra Bullock carried with her not only the memory of a blockbuster movie, but also a secret that she kept hidden for years. She had developed a genuine crush on Keanu Reeves. To the outside world, Sandra seemed confident and witty, always ready with a clever answer or a bright smile. But when it came to Keanu, she felt shy. She admired him deeply, but she never let on. Sandra later confessed in an interview that working with Keanu was almost too perfect. She said he was kind, gentle, and considerate of everyone on set. He wasn't the kind of actor who made everything about himself. Instead, he shared his energy with the people around him. He made sure she was comfortable, and he always looked out for the crew as well. That level of kindness touched Sandra and made her respect him even more. She also remembered how he had a quiet humor. He wasn't loud or flashy, but he could make her laugh with just a few words or a subtle smile. To Sandra, this was the most attractive thing of all. In her own words, it was hard not to have a crush on him. She admitted she would get butterflies sometimes, and even small moments, like him brushing hair out of his face or giving her a simple compliment, stayed in her mind long after the day was done. But despite her feelings, Sandra decided not to say anything. She thought Keanu didn't feel the same way, and she didn't want to risk embarrassing herself or, worse, damaging the friendship they had built. For Sandra, friendship was more important, and she treasured the connection they had already formed. So she buried her crush, smiling through interviews, always speaking kindly about Keanu, but never revealing the truth. Looking back years later, Sandra admitted she sometimes wondered what might have happened if she had been brave enough to speak up. Would things have changed? Would they have become more than friends? We may never know. But Sandra's quiet crush is what made their story so touching, because it shows even Hollywood stars can be shy when it comes to love. For years, fans believed Sandra's crush on Keanu during Speed was a sweet but one-sided secret. She had shared her feelings in interviews, and audiences loved hearing about it. But most people assumed Keanu himself never felt the same way. He was quiet, private, and never hinted at having those kinds of feelings. That is, until 2018, when he finally revealed the truth. Keanu appeared on a popular talk show, and the host brought up Sandra's old confession. The audience chuckled, expecting Keanu to smile politely and move on. Instead, he looked down for a moment, then gave a shy grin. "She didn't know I had a crush on her, too," he admitted softly. The crowd erupted in gasps and applause. Fans across the world couldn't believe what they had just heard. For more than 2 decades, both actors had secretly liked each other, but neither had been brave enough to say anything. Keanu explained that he had admired Sandra from the moment they met. He thought she was talented, funny, and full of energy. He loved how she made everyone laugh, and how she carried herself with such natural grace. But he also explained why he never told her. He didn't want to make things uncomfortable between them. They were working closely together on a big film, and Keanu valued their friendship above all else. The last thing he wanted was to risk ruining the bond they already shared. His confession spread quickly online, turning their story into one of Hollywood's most heartwarming missed opportunities. Clips of the interview went viral, with fans commenting that they had always known there was something more between the two. Many couldn't help but wonder how different things might have been if one of them had spoken up earlier. Keanu's honesty proved that their connection had been real all along. It wasn't just acting or clever directing. The chemistry audiences saw in Speed came from something genuine. Two people, both secretly drawn to each other, both too respectful and shy to take the first step. His confession didn't just confirm Sandra's story, it completed it. By now the world knows that both Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves secretly liked each other during Speed. Naturally, the big question fans always ask is, if they felt the same way, why didn't they ever date? The answer isn't simple, but it lies in timing, personality, and the choices they made about protecting what they valued most, their friendship. After Speed's success in 1994, both actors' careers exploded overnight. Keanu was pulled into a wave of big-budget films, and just a few years later, he became a global superstar with The Matrix. Sandra, meanwhile, quickly became one of Hollywood's leading ladies in romantic comedies and dramas like While You Were Sleeping and Miss Congeniality. Their schedules were hectic, their lives full of press tours, long filming commitments, and time apart. Even if there had been a chance for romance, the whirlwind of fame made it almost impossible to slow down and explore it. There was also their personalities to consider. Keanu has always been famously private and cautious about his personal life. Sandra has always been careful with relationships too, especially under the spotlight of Hollywood, where romances are often destroyed by gossip and constant media attention. Both of them valued trust and stability over quick sparks. Maybe that's why they decided, even unconsciously, not to cross the line. Sandra once said in an interview, "Maybe we would have ruined something perfect." She explained that what they already had, respect, admiration, and a friendship that felt effortless, was rare in Hollywood. To risk all that for romance, which might not last, could have been a mistake. Keanu seemed to feel the same way. He admired her too much to put their bond in danger. Hollywood is full of stories about co-stars who dated and then fell apart, leaving behind awkwardness or distance. But Keanu and Sandra didn't want that. They wanted something that would last longer than a fling, and in choosing friendship, they gained something stronger. While it may disappoint fans who still dream of them as a couple, the truth is that the reason they never dated is the same reason their story is so beautiful. They valued each other too much to risk losing one another. More than 10 years had passed since Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves lit up the screen in Speed. Fans had waited impatiently for another movie that would bring them together again. Finally, in 2006, that wish came true with the romantic drama The Lake House. Though it was very different from Speed's fast-paced action, this film showed another side of their chemistry, quieter, deeper, and more emotional. The story of The Lake House was unique. Sandra played Kate, a lonely doctor living in a lakeside house, while Keanu played Alex, an architect. The twist? They were living 2 years apart in time, yet able to communicate through letters placed in a magical mailbox. The movie was filled with longing, hope, and the question of whether two people destined for each other could overcome impossible obstacles. On screen, their connection was undeniable once again. The way they looked at each other, even when their characters couldn't be in the same room, touched audiences deeply. Critics noted that their chemistry had matured. This wasn't the fiery energy of Speed anymore, but something more tender and soulful. It was as though time had deepened their bond, both as actors and as friends. Off-screen, Sandra and Keanu enjoyed working together again. They spoke in interviews about how comfortable it felt to reunite. Sandra said that she would love to work with Keanu anytime because he always brought kindness and professionalism to the set. Keanu echoed the same, saying that being with Sandra again felt natural, like no time had passed. Their mutual admiration shone through, and fans could see it in every smile and every word. Though The Lake House didn't become a huge box office success like Speed, it became a fan favorite for one simple reason: Sandra and Keanu. Their reunion reminded people of what had been missing for over a decade. Watching them together again was like watching old friends reunite. Only this time, their characters were written as soulmates. For fans, The Lake House was more than just another film. It was a second chance to see what might have been. It reignited the hope that maybe one day, these two stars would share not just the screen, but perhaps even something more. By the time The Lake House was released in 2006, fans were convinced more than ever that Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves weren't just great co-stars. They were soulmates. Their chemistry was undeniable, and audiences around the world began to build a narrative of their own. These two were meant to be together. And even though the actors themselves never confirmed a romance, fans turned them into one of Hollywood's most legendary dream couples. On social media and fan forums, people shared endless clips of Sandra and Keanu in interviews. In nearly every appearance together, there was laughter, stolen glances, and a kind of natural comfort that looked suspiciously like love. Fans would freeze-frame moments, pointing out how Keanu's eyes softened when Sandra spoke, or how Sandra always seemed to light up when Keanu entered the room. For many, this wasn't just friendship. It was something deeper hiding in plain sight. As the years passed, the legend only grew stronger. People created fan-made posters of imaginary films starring the two, wrote stories about them finally confessing their feelings, and even started petitions begging Hollywood to cast them together again. Memes labeled them the couple we deserved, and articles often included them in lists of Hollywood pairs who should have dated. Part of what fueled this fantasy was the contrast between the characters they played and the reality of their lives. In Speed, Jack and Annie's romance blossomed in the middle of chaos. In The Lake House, Alex and Kate were soulmates separated by time. In both films, fate seemed determined to keep them apart. That theme carried into real life, where Sandra and Keanu admitted their mutual crushes only years later, when it was already too late. For fans, this irony made their story even more compelling. It wasn't just about movies. It was about a pair of real people whose connection was so strong it transcended the screen. To this day, fans still talk about them online, posting old clips, reminiscing about their films, and wondering aloud, what if? Even after 3 decades, Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves remain Hollywood's favorite almost love story, and in the eyes of many, the greatest dream couple that never was. For decades, one question has echoed in the minds of fans. What if Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves had actually fallen in love? It's a what-if that has inspired endless daydreams, fan stories, and even fantasy movie trailers made by devoted followers. The idea is simple but powerful. Two stars who clearly admired each other, both secretly holding a crush, finally taking that step into romance. Imagine the year 1994, right after Speed had wrapped. What if Sandra had told Keanu about her feelings instead of keeping them hidden? Or what if Keanu, shy but sincere, had asked her to dinner outside of filming? They were both young, both single, and both clearly drawn to each other. Hollywood might have had its newest golden couple. Together, they could have walked red carpets hand in hand, supported each other through award shows, and faced the intense spotlight of fame side by side. Some fans imagine them starring in even more films together, building a legacy of iconic pairings like Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan or Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. With Sandra's charm and Keanu's quiet strength, they might have become Hollywood's favorite love story both on-screen and off. Their partnership could have gone beyond movies, perhaps leading to marriage, a family, or simply a lifelong romance that people would admire for generations. Of course, there's another side to this fantasy. Sandra herself once admitted that maybe dating could have ruined something perfect. Romance, especially under the glare of Hollywood, can be messy. Couples are often torn apart by gossip, jealousy, or the pressures of constant travel. Perhaps their story would have ended too soon, leaving behind only regret instead of the friendship that still exists today. And yet, the magic of what if is that it doesn't need a real answer. The dream of Sandra and Keanu as a couple is powerful precisely because it never happened. It lets fans imagine the best possible version of events, a romance untouched by reality, forever frozen in possibility. In a way, this unspoken love story feels more romantic than if they had actually dated, because it belongs entirely to hope, imagination, and the hearts of the people who believe they were destined for each other. Even though Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves never dated, what they built instead may have been far more meaningful. Over the years, their bond has proven that friendship can sometimes be stronger, purer, and longer-lasting than romance. In Hollywood, where relationships often end quickly and painfully, Keanu and Sandra stand out as an example of loyalty, respect, and genuine care. Sandra has often spoken about how much she values Keanu. She has described him as thoughtful, gentle, and one of the kindest people she has ever worked with. She said that his presence on set always made her feel safe and supported, and that even years after Speed, whenever they reunited, it felt as though no time had passed. To Sandra, Keanu wasn't just a co-star. He was a friend she could always trust. Keanu, in turn, has never been shy about praising Sandra. He has called her funny, intelligent, and full of warmth. He once said she has the kind of energy that brightens every room she walks into. For someone as quiet and reserved as Keanu, those words are deeply meaningful. He clearly admires her, not just as an actress, but as a person. Their friendship endured through decades of fame, career ups and downs, and personal struggles. While both of them had their own relationships over the years, they never let anything come between their connection. In an industry where people often drift apart, their ability to remain close friends is rare and inspiring. Fans often say that maybe this is why their story feels so special. If they had dated, perhaps things would have ended, and their bond might have been lost to time. Instead, by keeping things as friends, Sandra and Keanu built something unshakable. A relationship that continues to this day, marked by kindness, laughter, and a deep respect for one another. Sometimes the strongest kind of love doesn't look like romance at all. It looks like two people who cheer each other on, who enjoy each other's company, and who hold on to a connection no matter how much time passes. For Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves, their friendship became their legacy. A reminder that love comes in many forms, and sometimes, the quietest kind is the most powerful. Today, when people look back at the story of Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves, they don't just see two actors who made great movies together. They see something deeper, the legacy of a secret crush that has fascinated fans for nearly 3 decades. It is a story about timing, silence, and choices. But more than anything, it's a story about two people who showed that admiration and respect can last a lifetime, even without romance. Their confessions, Sandra admitting she had a crush on Keanu during Speed, and Keanu later revealing he felt the same way, gave fans a glimpse into what might have been. Those small truths, shared years apart, were enough to spark endless imagination. People began to see them not only as co-stars, but as a pair who could have been one of Hollywood's greatest love stories. Even now, the thought of what if keeps their names linked together in articles, interviews, and fan conversations. But the real legacy lies in what actually happened, a friendship that has endured through decades. In a world where celebrity relationships often burn brightly and then fade, Sandra and Keanu's bond has remained steady and strong. Their story teaches us that sometimes unspoken feelings don't have to be regrets. They can instead become the foundation of something lasting and beautiful. For fans, their story is bittersweet. It's natural to wonder what might have happened if one of them had spoken up sooner. But at the same time, there's something magical about the fact that they didn't. Their unspoken crush has become almost legendary, turning into one of the most romantic, almost love stories in Hollywood history. The fact that they never dated keeps the mystery alive, leaving room for people to dream and imagine. In the end, the legacy of Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves is not about missed opportunities, but about the strength of connection. It's about the respect they showed each other, the kindness they shared, and the way their bond still inspires people decades later. Their story proves that love doesn't always need to be declared to be real. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones whispered in glances, hidden in laughter, and carried silently in the heart.